Welcome, everybody, to this week's KubeVirt community meeting. It is the 20th of May, I believe, or at least it should be. I'm going to post a link into our agenda into chat so that it's there. Yeah, is there anyone who is new this week, or if not new, has potentially never introduced themselves to the group before? If you'd like to take a minute to now, well, you don't have to. Very well. Well, if you're new and you're watching the recording, welcome. And you're welcome to join us live at any time. Let's have a look at the schedule. We've just got 2 big milestones to go. Well, maybe 3. Okay, so we've got the KubeVirt code freeze, which is the 24th of June. Well, it's 5 weeks away. That'll be a nice big one. And I've got a nice big list of VEPs to have a quick look at if time permits at the end of this meeting. So I think that's where a lot of the work's going to be. With a GA date of the 22nd of July. Between those 2 dates, probably at the very end of June, we'll be having our own conference. I need to figure out what date we do that and then tell everyone about it and set it up. But for those that haven't been around for any others, that is traditionally what we've done for the last, 4 or 5 releases. Our CFP check-in. Slowly. Here it is. Coming up and closing really quickly is the KubeCon Cloud Native Con North America CFP date. So it'll close at the end of the month. That is next Sunday. And I think like afternoon, whatever time zone Salt Lake City's in, Mountain Time, something like that. So that's a big one to pay attention to. For those in Europe, there's Open Source Summit. So I think it opened about 2 weeks ago. That'll be at the end of June, well, 24th of June. That's our code freeze date. So get it done before then. And I'm not aware of the KVM forum having posted their CFP date, but it is looming.
It is already posted, and the deadline is end of July.
Thank you, Lubo, for that. I need to update this form. All right, I will put that later. We have 19. That's right now. Cloudland is happening wherever Heidi Park is, somewhere in the large landmass that is Germany. And we have Felix there giving a talk, I think tomorrow. Next month, we have DevConf, Bruno, and these are the talks either about KubeVirt or by people from the KubeVirt community who we're very familiar with. Plus, also, it's not blue, but it's still useful information. We do have a booth at that, and we'll be sharing it with NM State and OVN Kubernetes. And I heard that we had a KubeVirt talk accepted into KubeCon Cloud Native Con Japan at the end of July. Really interesting talk about how SK Telecom and Japanese Telecom have built a massive network fabric across all of Japan. So that's pretty cool. And if you have a talk that you know you're going to give and it's not on our events, please let me know. And similarly, if you learn of an interesting event, whether it's CFP or a CFP that will soon be open, if you please let me know so we can share it with the broader community. Okay, the calendar. What's happening? So I won't cover the week meetings, but tomorrow we have our Accelerated Infrastructure Enablement Working Group. We have our VEP discussions next Tuesday. And for those that aren't unaware, the DRA discussion moved from late Tuesday for EMEA time zone to before this meeting on Wednesdays now. It's still fortnightly. So Tuesdays are a little bit lighter on, and that will be next week before this meeting. So that's the FYI for all of that. Okay, into the agenda. Itamar, you've got something.
Oh, do I? Yes, okay. Yeah, I posted it a few days ago. Basically, we were discussing this, let's say that we have a feature that wants to graduate to beta, and it depends on non-GA Kubernetes feature gates. So the current example that we have is image volumes, and I think it's an interesting case because one option on the one end is basically to ask for a requirement for beta graduation that all of the dependent FGs are GA'd on the Kubernetes side. The problem with that is that it will going to delay us by a lot. Because this means that we have to wait for all of our supported versions, which means the 3 last Kubernetes releases to have it GA before we can get into beta. So if the feature gate is beta right now on Kubernetes, I have to wait for at least 4 releases until my feature gate graduates, which is a lot, I think. On the other hand, because of the change that beta features are being on by default, if we say that we don't have to wait for graduation on Kubernetes, then basically some people are going to break their environments if they don't disable beta feature gates on their production environment. So yes, this is an interesting question. I tend to lean towards the second approach, which basically says that downstream vendors need to be responsible to disable beta feature gates on their production environments. But yeah, it was raised a few times, so I wanted to hear thoughts about it. Ali, what do you think?
Hey, I just want to add one thought, Itamar, which might help guide this discussion, is that in Kubernetes recently they made a policy change that feature gates that are graduating to beta have to be almost GA. So all the requirements that were typically for GA were pulled into its beta requirements. And with that policy change, I think it allows for projects like KubeVirt to be a little more aggressive on starting to consume beta features. So my personal preference would be that we don't wait for a year or more to consume beta features, and have gates for someone who makes a conscious decision downstream to not use those and have that facility available to them. I think that would be the best for maintaining velocity, but still balancing the requirement for production.
Thank you, Ali, and I agree with your opinion. Just to play devil's advocate and present the other approach, the problem is not necessarily if the feature is stable, but whether if it's even enabled on the other side. So let's say that, for example, now they're working on Kubernetes 136, I think, right? So let's assume that in this version, a certain feature is graduating to beta, right? We still support 135. We still support 134. In these versions, it's just not enabled by default. And even when it's beta, it might not be enabled by default. This just means that if somebody is not responsible and is not turning off features, beta features in production, the environment will just break. Like if they upgrade KubeVirt, it will just break. Again, I don't have a huge problem with that because I think that responsibility is makes sense for downstream vendors to have. But this was the concern, anyways. Eddie, are you here? I know. Sorry.
I have opinions on that specific concern, right? So, from my perspective, every Kubernetes feature, whether it's enabled or disabled, at least the major ones, right, would reflect somewhere in the API. And typically the field would be null if the feature gate is disabled, and the field will be populated if it is enabled and users are using those. So we can, so it, to me, it is a solvable problem, and the solution for this is that in the KubeVirt enhancement template, we can have a dependency on, like, we can have a section that declares the dependency on the Kubernetes feature and how to identify whether it's enabled or disabled. And if the identification is clear, then it is obvious that we can graduate this in that feature in KubeVirt faster. Um, if the enablement or disablement detection is hard, then I think it might make sense for that feature to wait. But I mean, from my perspective, the hard part of enabling and detection of enabling and disabling being hard uh, is rare occurrence. It is obvious, painfully obvious in the spec whether this feature is used or not, in most cases.
Yeah, so I have two concerns about that. So first of all, I don't think it's always easy. For example, feature gates in Kubernetes could be enabled on some nodes, disabled on others. We can get to a lot of edge cases here. But more generally, I think that it's a matter of responsibility. I don't like. I think that it makes more sense to place the responsibility on downstream vendors than on KubeVirt for to handle this, or web authors. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Eddie, I think you were.
Just to answer to feedback to Ari, so I'm not in favor of detecting anything. I don't think KubeVirt needs to detect anything on Kubernetes. It may be complicated and dangerous, and I don't see the need. It's as said here, it should be probably in documentation in a release notes of the upgrade or some kind of method like that. You can say that these are the new features that were introduced. They are beta and default enabled by default. They depend on this and this and this. Please remove them. If you run on production, it is recommended to remove them. If you leave them on, yada yada yada, something like that. Just know that what was said here is more or less like it's not really a precedent. I saw that we already did it in some cases, but it is pretty rare, and now it will be very common. So I think this needs to be communicated through release notes or upgrade documents or something, just to make sure we are good.
Blake?
Yeah, I mean, we were speaking about enabling beta features, right? I mean, not enabling the features by default before the Kubernetes side graduated.
No, I think the scenario is you have, let's say that you have, so there are multiple problematic scenarios here. One, for example, is that you have a beta in Kubernetes that is by default disabled, and we graduate a beta in the same time, which is default enabled. So if they will, if you installed KubeVirt on Kubernetes and you didn't enable explicitly that feature, your system may be broken or some things will not work as expected. So you should go either enable KubeVirt in Kubernetes that beta or disable KubeVirt that feature explicitly. And there are, I think Itamar said there are more edge cases, for example, that you graduate to a beta for example, in 1.9 you graduate to beta, that feature, and it's enabled by default. But in the previous Kubernetes, like version before that we do support, in 2 versions, right? We support deploying it on 2 older version of Kubernetes. That feature there is even alpha for Kubernetes.
Yeah,
So
but
then it's
I mean,
obviously disabled.
right. So I don't think that we can graduate anything, any feature that depends on anything in Kubernetes that is not graduated as well.
No, but you enable it by default.
Enable it in beta.
Yes.
Enable it in beta, it's a completely different scenario from graduating it and saying that we support it. Beta features are there to be validated and explored and played with. This is not any kind of stable environment. It's a beta feature. It's a feature that you're exploring how it works in your environment, and it's up to the deployer to understand whether there are other requirements. And we can be transparent about the requirements. We're not breaking anything for anyone because it's up to the deployer to verify that the features that are enabled are appropriate for him. But when we graduate features and we're saying that these features are graduated and KubeVirt stands behind those, these has to be graduated in all of the dependency, on all of our dependencies. So, I mean, obviously Kubernetes. But I don't understand why should we take responsibility for beta features. It's up to the admin to disable them if he wants a stable environment, or a downstream to disable relevant features that are not acceptable in downstream.
I agree. I mean, from my perspective, I think that we should require the dependent FG to be beta in the newest Kubernetes that we support. But that's it, from my perspective at least. And I agree. Like for GI, is something completely different. It needs to be GI in all the dependency that we in all the Kubernetes versions that we support.
So just to the implication of that would mean that the beta features will stay at least 2 releases in beta, right? Before it goes to GA, because the best case scenario or the worst case scenario would be feature A depends on Kubernetes feature B. Both of them are beta in that release. And then feature A has to stay for 2 more releases in beta so that feature B in Kubernetes graduates and we have enough releases supporting that in beta.
Yes, that's what I suggested. Yeah.
Lee?
Yeah, sorry. Just a quick one. I raised this in the VEP previously, but I think this case kind of warrants bringing it up again. I still find the mechanism for all of this very clumsy and brittle. I still think a kill switch for this behavior so that downstream vendors can just toggle a single thing and not have to review feature gates with every release to ensure that beta things aren't enabled underneath them has value. I know it was rejected previously, but yeah, just this coming up again. I know it's more configurables and everything, but I think there's definite value for vendors there, so they can have peace of mind and knowing that this behavior isn't going to creep up and bite them.
I'll call Alay in just a second, but we will need to move the subject in just a minute. But Alay?
Yeah, I agree with I agree with Lee that this needs to be discussed again. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that beta features will stay for 3 releases in beta. This was a problem seen in Kubernetes as well, that features got accumulated in beta and they did not move forward fast enough. And I am concerned that if that is the policy, then we'll have a lot of features in beta for a long time. Especially considering the number of webs that have been going through recently, it's a lot of beta features to live with.
Itamar, is there a VEP or a mailing list thread that you can link to here for this conversation to continue?
Yes, definitely. There is a web. I need a second to find it.
That's all right.
But yeah,
Just if
I'll
you could
post
put
it
in the
the chat.
agenda links. Does this conversation warrant a follow-up meeting where people can continue to hash this out in real time?
I must
I'll
admit
take
that
that.
this discussion was already done. But you can
Discussion is never over.
Yeah, but I'm saying that this was raised already. This was raised. I think even in the web. But I think we can change it. Like you can suggest changes.
Very well. Yeah, excellent. The web link is there. If anyone has any further thoughts or conversation to have. Daniel.
Yeah, hey everyone. I just wanted to make everyone aware that tomorrow will be the day where the 136 lane are going to be switched to required, which means they will block merges further on if tests are failing. The complicated situation that we now have is that we have regressions on the 136 lane, which occur to SIG compute tests and SIG storage tests. For SIG storage, there is a hot plug fix PR already up that Alex Galaniak provided. But for SIG compute, if we don't fix those issues in time for the Virt IOFS failing on 136, and for the up to be quarantined cluster pprof test, we probably need to quarantine them beforehand so that they don't block the merges. And this will force us to put a release blocker on the main branch so that we don't slip after those quarantine tests are being reintroduced. Just so that everyone is aware that how the process will be. Is there any questions to this?
Daniel, we were also talking about the move to CentOS Stream 10 for the 136 lane in this release as well. Like, given these regressions and the fact that you want it to already merge with the beta milestone tomorrow, do we want to revisit that and potentially delay it a cycle or something? Because if that's going to go live and be based on CentOS 9 for the hosting the KubeVirt CI providers and the actual builds, and then we're going to change it later and potentially introduce even more kind of breakage. Like, I'm not too keen on that. I'd rather keep things, fix things as they are now, and keep things stable for the rest of the release, and do the CentOS 10 stream change earlier in the next cycle if possible.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree because initially I was I think the one who was proposing let's rather just move directly to CentOS 10. But yeah, now it's pretty late in the cycle, and I somehow, since you were saying that you might be out for a couple of weeks after this week, and you will not be able to follow up on CentOS 10 move, and I fear that I don't know how much more of instability we will have, or we will additionally have to CentOS 10, or maybe I mean, you tell me, would probably the CentOS 10 move probably help in stabilizing those SIG compute and SIG storage issues? I have no idea, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not enough coverage with the PRs that have landed already to know that, and that's why it's a bit of a kind of scary move the later we get into the cycle. Yeah, that the effort had been blocked anyway because there were bugs with the actual provisioning in KubeVirt CI with CentOS 10, so they all had to be worked through. So this has all happened a lot later in the cycle than had originally been planned with the VEP. I don't mind postponing the VEP for another cycle and doing this earlier in 1.10. Because the last thing I want to do is to get closer to code freeze, and all of the KubeVirt CI provided jobs are unstable because of the move to 10 as well, and it's just adding stress and chaos to everything. So if we've already got this on our plate for now, let's push the CentOS 10 change to 110 and go from there.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Even though I find it sad that CentOS 10 is not yet provided for this release already, but yeah, I think we have to live with that at some point. I agree. Yeah, let's. I mean, we should probably discuss this in this room right now, whether we rather want to push CentOS 10 forward or not. But so yeah, I would agree with Lee that this might not be like a good idea right now. So my question is, does everyone else agree that we want to postpone that somehow? Okay, so I would basically take silence as an agreement. So let's postpone it to next cycle.
Yeah, sounds good.
The deafening silence of ambivalence. We are at the end of time. I have this giant list here that Itamar kindly provided for me. So this came up last week. I wasn't here, but I saw the recording. There was a request for which VEPs need attention. Here they are, split into 4 different categories. So we won't go through them now, but they are now there. There is work to have these put into the project board. But for now, we've got stellar reviews, has LTM missing approved, no reviews at all. That needs some attention. And I believe active unresolved changes requested is currently on the author. So if you're an author and you see your VEP there, that's on you. So eyes are required for these ones. Blame Claude. So we're at time. It's time for Seek Compute. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us here and for everything that you do in the community. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you next week. Thanks a lot.
See you.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Thank you.